Hey friends, welcome back to another Monday morning watercolor tips video. My name's Emma Lefave, and here on this channel on Monday mornings, I give you watercolor tips to start you off on the right foot for the week. So today we are talking all about how to get motivated when you have no motivation to paint, and also where to get inspiration from. So I put these two together because they kind of go hand in hand, but they are a little bit different. So let's start off with how to get motivated when you just have no motivation to paint. Now, this is something that happens to me a lot. Now, I also think it's because this isn't really a hobby for me anymore. It has become a job. It's a career. So there are times where I'm like, ugh, I don't want to have to paint to create content. I want to paint just for me, but I also need to get X, Y, and Z done. So sometimes it's just so hard to get motivated to paint when all I really want to do is either paint something for me that maybe I've painted a million times that I can't really put on my channel again, or maybe I just want to go and, drink my coffee in peace or watch a show. So the first piece of advice I'm going to give you is that if you don't have any motivation to paint, don't do it. Sometimes you need a break. You don't always need to be creative and produce something that is perfect or something to sell or give to someone. You don't need to. Unless it's your job, like mine, and sometimes you just need to suck it up. But if you don't have the motivation, take a little break. That's okay. Sometimes you just need a little bit of a spark, a little bit of inspiration to get you painting again. Now, I think there's a couple reasons of why maybe we're not motivated to paint. And these could be that we feel too much pressure to create a masterpiece. I know sometimes I don't want to sit at my desk if I feel the urge to, create something worthy of putting on YouTube or worthy of putting on Instagram. And especially if I try and it doesn't work out, I just get extremely frustrated. But sometimes all you need to do is lay some paint on paper without any expectations of it being perfect or any expectations of it getting a million likes. Just paint for yourself. And I find that even for myself, hard to do at times, but sometimes you just got to do it. So here are a couple things that you can paint that won't put pressure on you. The first one is just swatching your colors. Just take your palette and swatch your colors. Maybe you can swatch them in little rectangles like traditional swatches, or maybe you can practice your leaf or petal shapes while swatching all your colors. Heck, pick a shape and just swatch them in circles or triangles and just practice your brush strokes, but swatching your colors. That's easy enough, no pressure. Another thing to go along with that, practice your color bleeds. Have them slightly touching each other so you work on those colors bleeding into one another and watch the magic of watercolor happen before your eyes. Again, no pressure to create something that's a masterpiece, just lay your paint on paper. Another tip is paint something you're totally comfortable with and something that you like. Even if you've painted flowers a million times or even rainbows, something as simple as a rainbow, paint that. You may not have a motivation to create this big detailed piece, but just create something simple, maybe a pattern. And if you watch my Monday morning watercolor tips video from the other week, I showed you how to create something beautiful out of your practice pages. So create a pattern on paper, again, no pressure, and then maybe you can create some bookmarks out of it or a card or a background of something. Just lay your paint on your paper. No expectations. That's my piece of advice. Another thing you could do to get yourself motivated while swatching is maybe putting together different color palettes. Test some colors out that you don't traditionally use together and just put them side by side and see if they work together. Maybe a color palette that you end up putting together may get you motivated and inspired to paint something. Now, another big piece of this is where you are. Maybe you typically paint in an office or at your kitchen table. Try changing up your scenery, change up the location of where you paint. If it's a nice enough day, take your paint outside. That brings me to my next piece of how to get motivated. Also, how to get inspired. Go for a walk. Take your paints outside, go for a walk, find something, and just sit there and paint. You don't necessarily have to paint anything that's in front of you. You can just breathe in the fresh air and paint. Take your paints and swatch them outside. Put in some of your favorite music in your ears and just lay the paint on paper. And if you don't necessarily want to paint outside, just being out there can be inspirational in itself. There are so many things out there that maybe you don't always notice. Maybe there's a beautiful tree and maybe the way the leaves blow in the wind, or these beautiful little flowers that you've never noticed before are there, and the shapes of their petal or the color palettes of the natural colors in the flower will really get you motivated and inspired. But those natural pieces of nature can really inspire you to create something. Now, these things may seem really simple and kind of silly, but they may be just what you need to get motivated. So we talked about just having no expectation of perfection or creating a masterpiece. We've talked about just laying your paint on paper, and we've talked about taking your paint or just changing up your scenery, go outside. Those are ways to get motivated. Now let's talk about where we can find some inspiration. Okay, so for myself, I find I get the most inspired when I look at other artists. Now, I'm not saying go and copy another artist, but sometimes I love looking at some of my favorite artists just to see what they're doing. I'm really into illustrations, and I love artists that do these beautiful illustrations. And what I take away from that is not necessarily what they painted, but maybe the colors they used, the textures they used. Those type of things inspire me to use them in my own work. So again, I'm not taking the subjects, but I'm taking little elements of texture or color palettes. So I find Instagram super helpful for that. Another place I like to look for inspiration is Pinterest. Say there's a subject that you do want to paint, like flowers. I actually have a whole inspiration board of flowers on my Pinterest, and I just keep adding to that board of different floral bouquets that really inspire me. And again, I'm not copying flower for flower, but just taking little elements that really jump out at me. Another Pinterest board that I have that I really love and I do use are color palettes. You can just type in the words color palette and a whole bunch of references will pop up. Maybe a certain color palette that you didn't even think of will pop up and you're just like, ooh, I like that. Let's try and apply it to this painting and give it a try. And then lastly, again, I'm just going to say it, go outside. I find nature can be the most inspiring place to be. Take a drive, take a walk in your neighborhood, go find a forest. I don't know. Just get outside. Even on the grossest, rainiest days, you can find little bits of inspiration. And that fresh air and being one with nature will do you some good. So those are some tips of where to find your inspiration and how to get motivated. Let me know in the comments below if these are any of the practices that you do to get motivated, or maybe some of the tips that I gave you that really jumped out at you that you're going to try yourself. I really hope these tips were helpful. And if you guys have any more ideas of what you'd like to see in this series of Monday morning watercolor tips, please let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you guys would like to see. So that's it for today's video. It was a short one, it was a sweet one, and I hope it helped. Have a wonderful day, guys. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and follow me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Patreon for even more. Have a wonderful week, guys. Bye.